So Valve just launched the new Steam controller, and I swear the launch itself almost became the review. Because if you were not sitting on the Steam store right when this thing went live, there is a good chance that you probably missed it. PC Gamer is reporting that the controller sold out in roughly 30 minutes, and demand was heavy enough to break parts of the Steam store's payment system. And I believe that completely because I was right there in the middle of it. I had the controller in my cart, payment was ready, I hit checkout, and boom, payment failed, tried again, same thing, tried again a few moments later, same thing. And at first, I did not think, oh, this thing is actually selling out. I thought that Steam was just having one of those launch day meltdowns where the whole store gets hammered and nobody can pay for anything. And look, my morning was already kind of chaos. I work from home, full time, I've got a toddler in the house, and I'm trying to buy a Steam controller in between normal life happening around me. So I am doing this ridiculous dance where I'm checking the storefront, getting an error, walking away, coming back, refreshing, trying again, and getting bounced again. But here is the part I did not realize in the moment. While the checkout page was failing, the stock was also disappearing. So I thought I was waiting out a payment problem while I was actually watching the launch end in real time. Eventually, though, somehow, one of my attempts actually went through. So I do not even know how many times I tried, dozens, easily, maybe closer to 100 across the morning. And when the confirmation finally popped up, I had that moment where I just stared at the screen like, wait, did I actually get one? The order confirmation, done, I got lucky. So no, this is not my full Steam controller review. I do not have it in hand yet. I want to actually use it for a couple of weeks before I tell you whether the trackpads are worth it, whether the gyro is good enough, whether the haptics live up to the hype, and whether the setup process is something normal people are going to actually tolerate. That video is on the way, but today the launch is a story, and honestly, the launch might tell us more about Valve's hardware future than the controller itself, because the early reviews are already painting an interesting picture. So the hardware seems to be landing pretty well. Reviewers are praising the shape, the way it sits in the hand, the trackpads, the gyro, the haptics, and the repairable design as well. Now, that last part has really become a Valve thing now. They clearly want their hardware to feel like something that you can maintain instead of something that you throw away the second one part breaks. But the software side is where the warnings are starting to show up. This is not just an Xbox controller with a Steam logo. It asks for more from you, right? You have to understand the trackpads. You have to understand profiles. You have to be willing to configure things. And if the setup experience feels confusing, that is where Valve can lose people fast. And this matters because this controller is not really launching in a vacuum. It is arriving right before Valve takes another swing at the living room with a new Steam machine. This is the part that I keep coming back to. So the Steam controller sold only through Steam. No Best Buy backup, no Amazon listing, no retail shelf somewhere with a few extra boxes hiding in the back. Steam was the only place to get it. And once it sold out, that was pretty much it. Then almost immediately, eBay listings started popping up at $200 to $250, and Tom's Hardware has already reported some scalpers that are asking over $300 for a $99 controller one day after launch. Now, that's pretty ridiculous if you ask me, but it is also telling us something, right? Demand was actually real and supply was tight. And people are paying attention to Valve's hardware in a way that feels very different from where this company was 10 years ago. So Valve has already said that they are working on restocks. Lawrence Ying also said earlier this year that they were set up pretty much to ramp up production depending on demand. And Valve has now said through the statement making the rounds from Windows Central, we hate that not everyone who wanted one was able to get it. So more units are coming, right? We just do not know exactly when. Valve also pushed a Steam client update that adds support for the new controller. Battery notifications, connection pop-ups, a better add a controller dialog, and even a big picture mode tweak that makes it harder to accidentally put your computer to sleep from the power button core menu. And hold on to that sleep detail because that is not just a random patch note. That is basically one of the biggest things Valve has to get right with the Steam machine. So here is a real question. Does a Steam controller selling out in 30 minutes mean that the Steam machine is going to be some massive hit? Now, my honest answer is not automatically. A $99 controller and a full living room Steam machine are not the same kind of purchase. One is something that a lot of PC players can pretty much talk themselves into pretty quickly, and the other is a box that Valve has already said will be priced more like a PC with similar specs. Pierre Luc Griffiths has said it is closer to the entry level of the PC space, but that still does not sound like a cheap console, right? So we know that there will be a 512 gig model and a 2 terabyte model, but we still do not know the final price. And with RAM and chip prices moving forward, pretty much skyrocketing, the price is going to matter a lot. So I do not want to pretend every person who bought this controller is secretly lining up for a Steam machine. Some people do want it for the PC that they already have, and some want it for big picture mode. Also, some want it for a docked Steam Deck. Some people just collect Valve hardware because honestly, Valve hardware has become kind of its own little category now. But even with all of those caveats, I do think the sellout matters because the trust around Valve hardware is not what it used to be. So the original Steam machines were, but to put it kindly, they were pretty confusing, right? So there were too many versions, too many manufacturers, too many prices, and not enough clarity. Was it a console? Was it a PC? Was it for people who already had gaming PCs? Was it for Xbox and PlayStation players? Nobody could really explain the product in one sentence, right? So that is the problem. If people cannot immediately understand why a piece of hardware exists, it usually does not survive. And then the Steam Deck happened and everything pretty much changed. So the Steam Deck had a clean pitch, your Steam library, in more places. That's pretty much it. It did not ask people to start over. It did not ask them to buy into a new ecosystem. It just took the game people already owned and made a huge chunk of them portable. And for me personally, that actually worked. So the deck got me back into PC gaming because it pretty much fit into my actual life. I'm not always sitting at a desk with 2 free hours, right? Sometimes I have a short window during the day. Sometimes I have a little time after my kid is asleep. Sometimes I want to play something without turning my office into the only place that gaming can happen. And the deck made that possible in a way that my desktop PC never did. So was it perfect? No. Some games still need pro tweaks. Anti-cheat can still be a problem, and battery life depends on what you are playing, right? Desktop mode still exists because sometimes you have to pretty much tinker, but the core idea worked. And that is actually why people trust Valve more now. So when I look at the Steam controller and the Steam machine together, I think the real story is just, hey, Valve made another controller. I think the real story is that Valve is trying to make PC gaming feel normal in the living room. And that is a way harder problem than people make it sound. PC gaming is amazing. You get huge libraries, better cells, mods, indies, old games, weird games, early access games, the whole thing. But it can also be annoying. Drivers, launchers, Windows updates, shader compilation, Bluetooth problems, controller profiles, random settings that only become a problem when you have 30 minutes to play and 20 of those minutes disappear into troubleshooting, right? At a desk, you can pretty much deal with that. Keyboard and mouse are right there. You can tab out, you can fix something, you can relaunch. It is annoying, but it is still manageable. On the couch, it feels completely different. When I sit down in the living room, I pretty much do not want a project. I want the thing to turn on, I want the controller to connect, I want the TV to switch inputs, and I want Steam to be there. I want to be in a game, and that is the whole promise. And that is where the Steam machine either works or it doesn't. So it cannot feel like a desktop PC that happens to be under your TV. It has to feel like a living room device. You press the button, you wake the box, you turn on the TV, and you switch the input. Open big picture mode, resume the game, no keyboard, no mouse, no getting off the couch because something did not pair. That sounds basic, but the basic stuff is the entire product, right? This is why sleep and wake reliability is such a big deal now. If you look through the public Valve software slash SteamOS GitHub repo, you can find issues around this kind of stuff. Controller input not registering properly after wake timing being inconsistent, haptics taking a moment to come back, Bluetooth wake behavior not being totally reliable. Now, on a Steam Deck, that is pretty annoying, but the device is in your hands, so you can recover pretty quickly. On a Steam machine, it is a bit different. The box is across the room. If the controller does not wake it cleanly, or the TV doesn't switch, or the input does not come back correctly, the whole console-like experience pretty much breaks before you even launch a game. CEC is part of that too. The Dream version is simple. You pretty much press the Steam button, the Steam machine wakes up, the TV turns on, HDMI CEC switches to the correct input, and big picture mode is already ready, right? That is what this has to feel like pretty much. Because anyone who has messed with a DIY living room PC, such as the SteamOS box or Bazite, they pretty much know the truth, right? There is usually a keyboard nearby because eventually something needs help. That cannot be the Steam Machine experience. And this is why I think the controller launch is a signal, but it's not the whole story. It pretty much shows Valve has actual momentum. It shows people care, and it shows that the Steam Deck rebuilt a lot of confidence, right? But the Steam Machine still has to prove something much harder than demand. It has to basically prove that Valve can make PC gaming feel effortless from the couch. That means price has to make sense, supply has to be better than this controller launch, the configuration UI has to be less intimidating, the controller has to connect reliably, sleep and wake has to work, CEC has to work, and big picture mode has to feel like the main experience, not like a PC interface wearing a console costume. So yes, the Steam controller selling out in 30 minutes is good news for Valve. It is absolutely a sign that people are excited about what Valve is building. But I do not think the lesson is, well, the controller sold out, so the Steam machine is automatically going to explode. The lesson here is that Valve has earned another chance in the living room. Now they have to focus on making the boring stuff invisible, and that is where I am with this. So I got pretty lucky and I did manage to get a controller order in. But I am way more interested in what this launch says about Valve, about what it says about their next move. Because if they nail the Steam machine, this could be the first time that PC gaming in the living room feels like something regular people actually pretty much want to use every day. But if sleep, wake, controller pairing, and TV control are still messy, then all the momentum in the world is not going to save it, right? So let me know what happened to you. Did you manage to get a Steam controller before it sold out? Or are you waiting on a restock? Are you buying it for your PC, your Steam Deck, or are you really waiting for the Steam machine? And how important is that one button couch experience to you? Once mine shows up, I'm going to spend real time with it and come back with a full hands-on review. Real games, couch sessions, docked setups, configuration, all of it. This is Ed Saavedra. Hit that subscribe button if you want that video when it drops, and I will catch you all in the next one.